What a week it has been. What a last couple of weeks it has been. Really is. It just continues. Breaking stuff continues to flow right in. He's Jesse Stiers live with his Christmas tree in the background. I'm Sean Stiers. How are you tonight, Jess?
Doing well. It just gets darker and darker sooner and sooner, though.
I mean, that's December, right? We're a little bit we're about a week and a half or so away from Christmas. Jesse's in the IB spirit with his IB sweatshirt, stoked as well. Glad to have you with us here tonight, man. I mean, we had one show all ready to go, and then 5:30 Eastern time, Henry starts yapping, and it woke up Audric Estime, and he's like, "Hey, I think I'm going to declare for the NFL." And I'm going to opt out of the Sun Bowl as well. So that's where we are. Audric Estime, fresh off one of the all-time great seasons for a Notre Dame running back with 1,341 yards. He averaged 6.4 yards per carry, set a Notre Dame record with 18 touchdown runs, a single season school record, 18 touchdown runs this season. And of course, he capped it off with his monster game against Stanford to end the season. I mean, Jess, this is probably this and Joe Alt, which we both had this week, the least surprising news that we've got. But here it is. It's finally here. Audric Estime, after his junior season, has decided to opt out.
Yeah, and like you said, these were the ones that were the most expected, but also the ones that have the biggest impact, right? Because it's likely if you are expected to sit out, it's because you are a significant player and you are probably moving on to the NFL or have the aspirations to move on to the NFL. And like you said, it's going to be painful without the two of them, but it also gives opportunity to some of the young guys, Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love. They'll get more touches in the backfield in the bowl game. So I'll be interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, we're going to see more of them now. And this is something that even though Audric Estime is just sharing this news with the world officially, again, we pretty much knew it was going to happen. And as Marcus Freeman said, whenever it was last week or the week before, whatever the timeline is at this point, I can't even keep track of when anything was said or done at this point. But I mean, they've been practicing with the guys who they know are going to be there, and the guys who are going to opt out had long decided pretty much that they were going to opt out. And so there'll be no Audric Estime. So they've been practicing with the guys that they're going to have. They're going to have Jeremiah Love. They're going to have Jadarian Price. They're going to have Devin Ford. They're going to have Jabron Payne. So they know who they'll have for this bowl game, and obviously they'll have three of those four coming back next year as well. Did you get tired of the light reflecting off your glasses there?
Yeah, there's just too much light going on. I'm gonna go partially blind for the show.
Before we get into what it looks like without Audric Estime, though, is there, like, for Kyron Williams, to me, his signature moment was that touchdown run with the stiff arm against North Carolina in his final season, in one of his final home games for Notre Dame. Like, that to me was the signature Kyron Williams play. Is there a signature Audric Estime play or moment to you? I'm kind of springing this on you, but I mean, Audric sprung it on all of us, so.
I'm trying to think of something more recent, but the one that really comes to mind to me was the touchdown against North Carolina State to open the second half. Because had he not scored that touchdown, I don't know if Notre Dame makes it out of that game. They were struggling early on. And to me, it showcased everything that Audric Estime is he can hit the hole fast. He's a physical runner. But then what you don't know about him is he has that breakaway speed, and no one could catch him for about 80. I think it was like 80 yards or so. And so that to me is Audric Estime in a nutshell. So that's the one I'd have to go with. And then I think there was a couple, and again, the first half against Clemson was really nice. The couple hurdles that he had in there, those were those were kind of signature Audric plays for me. But I'd have to go with the North Carolina State run.
Yeah, that's the first one that came to mind when I thought about it. And Michael Hahn said it as well. The North Carolina State run coming right out of the locker room, basically, and just boom, bang. And like you said, it displayed both his physicality and his speed as he ran away from guys on that play as he churned downfield for 80 yards. The Duke touchdown run that came right after Sam Hartman's 4th and 16 conversion, that came to mind as well, because he kind of had to, create a little bit of his own, get it going on that one as well. Obviously wasn't as long, so it was a little bit different, a little bit of a dart to the end zone as opposed to that long churn to the end zone that he had. But, like the NC State, there's always been the people talking about the similarities, the two big backs, Jerome Bettis and Audric Estime, and that was almost like Bettis-esque. I know that you weren't born yet. The Sugar Bowl when Notre Dame defeated Florida, and I don't know how many of those highlights that you saw, but Bettis was some of the long runs that he had in that game, doing some of the same stuff with both the physical play and the breakaway speed that he had as well. There's some similarities there, so that was kind of cool. And really, the Stanford game, not a moment, but to me, it was a definite, really, like, that is the last we're going to see of Audric Estime in a Notre Dame uniform. And for Audric Estime to go out with 238 yards and 4 touchdowns in that Stanford game, and the last game that he will ever play for Notre Dame, I thought that was pretty fitting as well. As it, again, it ended up, moving him up in the record books. 1,341 yards this season, 5th place all time in a single season in Notre Dame history. He wasn't that far away, remember, from the single season record, but also those 4 touchdowns gave him 18 for the season, which are a single season record. So I thought that was, it's kind of an exclamation point, a fitting way for Audric Estime to go out at the end with that big game that he had against Stanford. And what did we say going in? It was going to be bad news for the Cardinal in that game, and that's what Audric turned it into. Bad news for the Cardinal. 238 yards.
I wish I would have gotten the opportunity to watch that Stanford game. I was unfortunately doing a lot of, traveling around that day.
It's not about that. There were a lot of people who didn't get to see that game because it was the Pac-12 network game. I wonder how many people actually got to see it that night. I don't know.
Yeah, so I didn't even get to see Audric cap off his career and him having, a great game, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Sloppy Joe says he's excited to see Love and Price. So what do you think it looks like? What do you think it looks like in the Sun Bowl? Is Jeremiah Love, do you think he is definitely the lead back? Is it Jadarian Price? Like, do you think we see a lot of 21 personnel? What's your best guess? Because we're going to see Steve Angeli and a new offensive line out there as well.
Yeah, so in terms of the running back rotation, I think that Jeremiah Love would be your guy to see the most touches. And then after that, I think you'd see Jadarian and Jabron Payne splitting kind of the rest of the workload. But I see Jeremiah Love at like a 50% and the other guys at like a 25% snap share each. I think Jeremiah Love has shown the most in terms of being that dynamic running back out of the backfield. And, his limited touches this season, whether it's handoffs or catching, some screens out of the backfield, I felt like he's done really well.
And that's kind of the way it went this season. Estime had 210 carries. Jeremiah Love only 56, and his carries kind of tapered toward the end of the season, and we did see more Audric Estime, but Jadarian Price had 34 carries and Payne had 39. So Devin Ford was much farther off, but it just feels like when you're, like you've got Mitchell Evans is out for this game, and you're obviously with all the receivers who are gone, even though you have some bodies who are going to be out there, it feels to me like we potentially see some more 21 type stuff. But I think that there is a lot they can do to kind of get creative with their game plan, and they've had long enough to get ready for it because, again, they've known that Audric Estime is going to be out. So it's kind of exciting to see. Like, we're going to see a completely different looking offense. Like, for everyone who's complained about the offense, and don't get me wrong, there's been plenty of reasons to complain about the offense this season. We're going to see something, I think, that looks a lot different potentially between the quarterback and the receivers and the running backs who are going to be available to play.
Yeah, I'll be really curious to see, is this going to be like, how much of a shakeup in the offense is there going to be? Is it going to be more stuff that we can anticipate next season in the Riley Leonard era? Or are we going to be, still running the same offense that Sam Hartman was running? Or is it going to be kind of a nice in between, some new wrinkles here and there to kind of spice up how you want to attack this team, considering what's left on your roster, right? Because we've talked about this before, and I would say my biggest kind of gripe with Jared Parker is, rather than kind of finding what works for his personnel, it felt like he was enforcing kind of his offense on the personnel and saying, hey, like, make this work. I think this would be a great opportunity, knowing that Angeli will be playing quarterback, and with Price and Love in the backfield. I would like to see some more creative stuff and get your guys, your more dynamic playmakers, the ball on offense. So hopefully we see, some variation. And there's a considerable amount of time off now. You know who you're playing, you know what defense they're going to run. And so while the rest of the team, player-wise, probably have had a little bit of time off since the end of the season to finish up the semester and everything like that, you would hope that Jared Parker kind of maybe started to scheme a little bit, because like you said, he's known for a while now who's playing and who's not. And so I think that there's been ample time to kind of figure some stuff out.
Yeah. Big Licks Burner says, I don't know, but I think Dion Colsey is going to flash. And I don't disagree with that. DJ just getting in. He said, I'm late. Can you start over? Audric Estime declares for the draft, opts out of the Sun Bowl. Go. Yeah, so Estime is going to be missed, but again, they've been preparing for this. We've pretty much known this is going to happen, so good luck to Audric Estime. Obviously, he's been really fun to watch. I don't know about you, Jess, but I have always, like I was talking about Jerome Bettis, like whether it's Bettis, Marshawn Lynch, those kind of guys, Audric Estime, I love watching these big physical backs who aren't just like, smash it into the line and churn forward for a couple of yards, but guys who've got a little shiftiness to them as well, who can be both physical and throw you, give you like an angry run through some tackles, and then that burst of speed. Like that to me is a lot more fun even than watching like these, just the little shifty guys scat around and all that kind of stuff. I love seeing some guys throw both some strength and some quickness into the mix when they're toting the rock.
Yeah, that's what to me, in my opinion, that's what makes Audric Estime the complete back. Is he's got the speed, he's got the agility, and he's got the power to finish off runs as well. He's not like what I would call a pinball running back. He's not just bouncing around everywhere. He's very downhill. He uses his power to get through you. But then again, he's like a ballerina. He's light on his toes. And he can still, have that breakaway speed from you. And I think, again, that's the most impressive part to Audric Estime is you look at him and you see him as, probably this guy who's just going to just try to, win with his power and strength, but really he has finesse and speed as well.
Correct. Big Lick. He's bringing the licks tonight. How excited are we to see Joe Alt anchor the Giants O-line next year? Someone was asking last night about, Alt and draft predictions and what could be a good fit, like organizationally, what would be a good fit. And of the teams that are going to pick in the top 10, the Giants actually have one of the better, traditionally run organizations. But, like I said last night, for obvious reasons, I don't want to see Joe Alt end up with the New York Giants. I don't want to see him have to play against the Cowboys twice a year. So I am anti.
All I'm saying is Cowboys could use an Audric Estime type running back.
They could. Just don't even start there. Don't do it. Like, are you going to get me all worked up? Like, how many months do we have? We got like 6 months until the draft or something like that at this point.
Yep.
Don't even
I'm
start
planting the
down that
seed
road.
early.
Don't even
I'm
start
letting
down
the
that
tree
road.
grow.
Yeah. If you're going to throw that out there for like the next 6 months, I might just have to ban you. So just don't even get me. Don't even get
See,
me
Michael
going
Hahn
there.
even agrees.
Yes. Good one from Johnny, though. Which NFL team needs a running back the most? I mean, they're all just so interchangeable now, it seems like. That's the thing. Like, do they?
Steelers wouldn't do it, but I feel like he could fit well in that organization as well.
Yeah.
I don't think Najee Harris is good anymore, and I think he's just. I don't think he's going to get another contract, and that first contract is just about up.
Yeah.
That's where my mind went.
I mean, how about what Kyron Williams has turned into in the NFL?
I know.
Like, he's just been a stud this year. I hope to see that continue. I mean, Sean McVay liked him and he took him, and it's really paid off.
I think it's very indicative because he went on the IR for those 4 weeks, and as soon as he came back, I mean, he was the guy again. It went right through him. So
Doing
they
it
were
again.
clearly anticipating him.
There's some other news, but we've also got word, with all these opt-outs, some good news for Notre Dame because there are a couple of defensive players who early on in this process were thought to be potentially opting out, and it sounds like they're going to play based on some stuff that I heard today. JD Bertrand, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, both looking to play in the Sun Bowl, it sounds like.
Interesting.
So that's very, and remember one of our jabroni Twitter friends out there like a week ago talking about
he swore
Javonte Jean-Baptiste wasn't going to play, and Javonte threw up his quote tweet or quote X, or I don't even know what you call it anymore, with the question mark up there. And from what we understand, those two veterans are going to be playing in the Sun Bowl. So the defense, it sounded like, is going to be pretty stacked still with the guys who are going to be playing for Notre Dame. The offense is going to be completely new look, but that defense, which was one of the best in the nation all season, it's going to be largely intact with the exception of Cam Hart.
Does that worry you at all?
Does it
in
worry
terms
me?
of the game, how the game flow might go? Because if you have a lot of inexperience on offense, are we just going to slow it down and rely on that defense, knowing that Oregon State's probably going to be on their third string quarterback by the time the game starts?
Play the safe game plan.
That seems like what Marcus Freeman would want to do.
Yeah.
Being a defensive-minded head coach.
That's a good call.
I think you're going to see a lot of running. I think you're going to see clock management, not a lot of risk. And if the whole defense is playing, I think that's what you're going to rely on.
That's a good call. I think the other way, because Oregon State, they're not going to bring everybody back, but let me see. I've got a list here of guys who are looking like they're going to be out. So you've got a linebacker, a safety, a corner. So 3 from the defense in the transfer portal from Oregon State. They've largely got a lot of guys back. Now, that is the best list that I could find today. So they were a pretty good defensive team as well and a pretty good running team as well. But that, man, you bring up a good point. That kind of worries me now. Kind of worries me. Like, I was kind of excited to see what this offense could be, and I know a lot of people are excited to see what Steve Angeli can be, and Angeli is obviously, more than looking forward to his opportunity, and a lot of guys who haven't had some opportunities on offense are going to get a lot of opportunities, and what are they going to look like, though? Because I don't think they're just going to come out slinging it all over the field.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's the route that they're going to want to go. Yep. Don't get me wrong. I still think you're going to see passing and everything, but it's just I don't think it's going to be super, like it's
you can only get away with swing passes, so often, right?
Right.
They're pretty much sitting on what Steve Angeli can do, what they saw from him this season. So,
right.
And his last pass attempt was an interception as well. Yeah, well, I don't even know if you realize that, because the one pass attempt that he got in the Stanford game was an interception, and then he handed off every play the rest of the game. Kind of wrote it out. So Big Lick says Angeli deserves a chance to show what he can do. Being conservative won't tell us anything about his potential.
No, I agree.
I agree.
I'm just thinking about
Honestly,
it
I
in
don't know.
Marcus Freeman's perspective.
Yeah. I mean, but they're bringing in Riley Leonard. So how much do they actually care about Steve Angeli's potential? I'm just being honest. I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't mean that as a pejorative. I'm just being as honest as I can. They're bringing in next year's starting quarterback. Brent wants to know, can the current transfers play in the bowl game? Theoretically, they can, but it is very rare when that happens. They have pretty much all left the are you talking about incoming transfers? The answer is no. If you're talking about incoming transfers, you can't play for two teams in the same season in college football. So like incoming transfers cannot play. It would they would have to wait until next year. So that can't happen. But like again, like guys who are transferring out, in theory, they could hang around, just like Sam Hartman knew he was entering the portal last year at Wake Forest. He played in their bowl game, helped them win the Gasparilla Bowl, and then he moved on.
Good old Gasparilla Bowl.
Yes. So Cam Hart, this came out probably within an hour or so after last night's show ended. Speaking of guys who won't be playing, he's officially headed to the NFL and opting out of the Sun Bowl. Again, this one to me is not very surprising because of his track record with the injuries, the multiple shoulder injuries and shoulder surgeries that he has had. So I am not overly shocked to see Cam Hart opt out. He had already accepted the invitation to the Reese's Senior Bowl. So I think it makes perfect sense for him. Any surprise at all for you to hear that, Jess?
No, and I'm actually very happy for Cam Hart because I think he's deserved this moment. And like you said, he's overcome a bunch of injuries, so it's good to see. Like this is the one where you're like, all right, I feel real good about this one. Ryan Roberts is here.
Yeah. See, Antoine, going back to what you were talking about, he says with basically the whole defense playing, I think the offense will show more.
In an ideal world, but you got to remember what kind of head coach Marcus Freeman is.
Right. Like he has shown. Look at the big games that they've played. They've shown a much more conservative game plan, and they've put the game on the shoulders of the defense, right? They haven't taken many chances.
Right.
And I think that that's going to be the blueprint.
Well, and again, it's a bowl game here. So you can make the argument that this is the biggest game of the season.
Yeah. It's a chance for Marcus Freeman to have his first 10-win season.
Right. It's not like there's not a lot on the line. There is a good amount on the line, especially for Marcus Freeman.
Yes. Especially with everything that has gone on this month, you want to finish your season and this month with the best, most positive note you can. And that's with a win. And again, like he considers this a big game. And the way that he has played big games, the way that they have strategized big games is to pull back, not to go forward. So they have pulled in the reins on the offense. And look, they're definitely not going to come out and have Steve Angeli slinging, but they do have what? They have good athletes at running back, right? They have a couple good tight ends still, and they have good talent at wide receiver, which is still the same talent that was up and down all season long. So
I'm envisioning phase on screens to start the game.
Phase on screen. I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that at all. Michael wants to know how many of the transfers have found new homes. Just curious if one of the two receivers could possibly come back to the team if offered. I'm not counting on that. But
usually when you're gone, I feel like you're gone. They're not a lot of teams are like, oh yes, come back.
It's just very rare. Yeah, and I know people always ask that question, could they come back? And it's just, I would say probably 1% of everyone who enters the transfer portal end up going back to the team that they were trying. It might be a little bit more than 1%, but there are just not many guys who end up going back to their team. But you've got Chris Tyree is at Virginia now. Zeke Correll is at North Carolina State. Nana Osafo-Mensah and Braylon James are both at TCU. And I think that's it right now. I do have the list. Let me see. I'm going through the list that I've got here in front of
Speaking of
me.
transfer players to come back, did you see the picture of all the QBs hanging out together in Eddy Street Commons?
Yeah, over at Five Guys.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Apparently, Drew Pine was part of that picture.
Yeah, he's one of the guys with the back to you, so you couldn't see his face.
Yeah.
But I not to get off on a tangent or a side note, but I'm curious how that started. Like, are they all in a group chat? Are they like, "Hey, you guys, we're all back. You want to go to Five Guys?" Like, because it's like
Right.
theoretically, like Pine and Buckner, what they said hi to Hartman as they were leaving, and he was coming in through the front door. Like,
no, but remember, Buckner went through a whole spring with.
Oh, that's
with
a good
Hartman.
point. That's a good point. Sorry, I forgot.
So,
about
like,
that.
you had Pine and Buckner, who had a pretty good relationship, it seemed like. At least that's what everybody said. And then they also, Buckner and Hartman were said to have a pretty good relationship. And obviously, Angeli was there in the mix as well. So, yeah, it's like a quarterback convention over at Five Guys.
Just catching up.
That's right. All right, so Cam Hart leaving, no surprise, but we'll see some different faces out there. I would imagine we'll see both Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey, kind of rotating out there. Does that get you excited?
That gets me excited. I love some Cam Hart, but I also love some Christian Gray and Mickey. I think those guys will be great, and I think that they've earned the opportunity to kind of play in a bigger role at the end of the season, right? Like, I remember watching them against Pitt have a really good game. It's just like in their limited opportunities, it felt like they have made an impact, and so the opportunity to play the entire game is something that they should be really, chomping at the bit to get to.
Yep. Big opportunities for them. Jack Kaiser is coming back, and as we said, J.D. Bertrand is going to play in the bowl. So you're going to have two veteran linebackers, and you're still going to have guys like Jalen Sneed, Jaden Osbury, and potentially Drake Bowen in the mix. Kind of be curious to see, what potential reps that Bowen might be able to get out of that with J.D. Bertrand coming back at the Mike linebacker. But, and then you've got pretty much the entire defensive line coming back, the starting defensive line. Anyway,
I know
for the bowl game.
I know I wasn't doing the show with you guys, but I was tremendously surprised by Howard Cross coming back. And granted, I'm not mad about it, but I guess I thought he was definitely going to kind of put his hat into the NFL.
You don't see too many guys have the kind of season, especially for a nose guard. You don't see guys have the kind of season that he had, and then who already in his fifth season, and then decide to come back for another year,
right?
For year 6. Like,
is he chasing to finish that graduate degree? Like what is keeping him here? Essentially,
I don't know.
Did maybe he not get feedback from NFL grades? Like to me, it's I don't know. But that's the one where I was really surprised. I felt like
some of the NFL draft evaluators I've seen have him among their top 5 or 6 interior defensive linemen, but it's kind of hit and miss. Some do, some don't. So
yeah,
maybe he just feels like there's some things that he needs to work on,
Yeah, and if you're not specifically
and get a little thicker too, because he is still only 288 pounds. Get a little closer to 300 maybe.
And I think that if you're in that kind of maybe 5, 6, 7 range, that can be kind of a dead man's zone because not every team is looking for that position. And so you combine that with, where it might fall in the draft, where other players are at, not specifically needing it, kind of being in that maybe like mid-range tier. I think there's a lot of, he could potentially slip all the way to, a day 3, day 4 type of guy, or sorry, a round 4, round 5 type of guy.
Yeah, exactly. So that takes us to the kicker. And this is what we were originally going to lead the show with today because they got the commitment from the South Carolina kicker, Mitch Jeter. He was South Carolina's starting kicker each of the last 2 seasons, also kicked off The last 4 seasons, he was 23 of 25 in field goal attempts, 75 of 78 on extra point attempts over the last 2 years. Excuse me. He was a perfect 21 for 21 on field goals of less than 50 yards in those 2 seasons. That includes hitting all 4 field goal attempts of 40 to 49. He was 1 for 3 from 50 plus yards this year, but he was 2 for 2, 50 plus last year. And that made him 3 for 5 on 50 plus yard field goal attempts the last 2 seasons. So what do you think about getting South Carolina kicker Mitch Jeter? Jeter.
I think that this is ultimately the route to go in terms of kickers. And it sounds like that he is going to be an upgrade from what we had last season in Spencer Schrader. But the main reason I like this concept of getting the kickers from the portal is these guys are proven, right? I feel like a lot of when these young kickers come in, it's either very hit or miss. They're either a stud or they kind of go through it a little bit. And whether that's the psychological battle, the actual battle of kicking, field goals, whatever it might be, I feel like it is far more for comfort's sake to just go out and get a guy that's proven, bring him in, let him do his thing, and go out. It's not like a position that needs constant development all the time. You either got it or you don't as a kicker. And so when you bring someone in, I just feel like it's a lot easier and it gives you more confidence overall.
So it sounds like you like the idea because this is the 3rd straight year they have gone out and brought in a veteran kicker. They brought in Blake Groupie a couple of years ago. They brought in Spencer Schrader for this year. Do you think, like, especially as a Power 5 program, do you think you're better off? Do you think they're better off just going this route, going out and find guys who have shown that they have a track record? You know what you're getting when you get a veteran, one of these veterans like this, like they've brought in now the last 3 years. Are you better off doing that than going out and trying to recruit unproven high school kickers?
Absolutely, because again, these guys, when you bring them in, that exactly what you're getting. There's no experimental stage. It's no hit or miss. Exactly, like the tape. There's tape. He's proven. And why kind of, again, go through that? Like there are NFL teams right now who still can't get, find us, like the Rams. The Rams have gone through like 3 or 4 different kickers this year. And so I think it's a lot easier to bring in someone in the offseason that you trust and know than kind of have to roll that dice and potentially figure out something during the season. Because, field goals and extra points, while they seem small, they're a very pivotal part of the game. And especially, and I've always said that, in the closer games, the Texas A&Ms, the Louisvilles, the Florida States of next year, I think you need to be, buttoned up in all phases.
Yes. We're still going down the road that the football staff was supposed to know that Brandon Aubrey was going to be
You're just supposed to go out and knock on every doorstep of every program and say, you guys got some football players?
Yeah.
Anyone want to go play some football?
I guess in theory, at the very least, you could go over and, talk to guys, hold a meeting with the soccer team and watch guys kick a little bit, see who's, got maybe a little bit of a knack for it and, gauge who might be interested. But at the same time, I guess kind of the problem with that is those guys are on scholarship to play soccer and their season is going on at the same time. It's a little bit more difficult than like high school, where you're trying to do both because you're not, you don't have soccer games on Friday night when you're, playing in high school, but in college, it becomes a little bit more difficult, I think, trying to manage both of those things. So I don't know how realistic that is to try to jump into that. I would prefer just to do what we were talking about. Just go out and maybe once every 2 or 3 years, you bring in a young high school kicker and see what you're able to get with him, even though you have to burn a scholarship to do that, unless you're going to invite a guy to walk on, which means he's going to have to pay out of his own pocket. I would rather invest a scholarship in a guy who's got a proven track record. Like give the scholarship to the punter who maybe also has, but like in high school, almost every kicker is a punter and every punter is a kicker, right?
Yeah, they do
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah, exactly. So you give the scholarship to the punter and he's your backup kicker, like your emergency kicker if you need it. And then you go out and just bring in a veteran every year, like they've done the last 3 years. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the kicking has been a lot more consistent these last few years as well as they've done this.
And we don't have to go spend the night in a kicker's recruit's home like good old Jim Harbaugh did to land these kicking recruits. We just go out and find the guy that's proven.
Yep. Oh, Andre wants to know who'll score more points, Notre Dame's offense or defense in the Sun Bowl.
I'm going to go with offense, but I do enjoy the question.
Yes. Going back to what we were talking about with the game plan. I think it might be like 14 to I don't know. I think the defense stands a chance to put them in some really good situations. I think could be. Have you seen like what the over under is on this game by any chance?
I haven't seen anything yet. I haven't looked at spread. I haven't looked at over and under. It's funny. I actually just got invited to like this college bowl game pick'em type situation. You can only pick spreads. Can't pick winners. You have to pick a spread for every college bowl game. But you don't have to lock them in now. You basically have until the day of the game to lock it in because you just don't know who's playing and who's not. So be very interesting.
Over under for the Notre Dame Oregon State Sun Bowl right now, according to FanDuel, 43.5 points. Notre Dame minus 6.5 still.
Ooh.
Like, I don't know how you pick any of these bowls with all the opt-outs and transfers. How can you even come close to knowing what anything is going to look like?
I'm very surprised that FanDuel even has lines out because it's just like you said, like Audric Estime, I feel like being out would lower both of those numbers. I think that would lower Notre Dame's spread, and I think it would lower the over-under because that man's a lock for a touchdown just about every game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Big Lick prediction for the breakout player of the bowl game.
I like this one.
I don't think people are expecting.
I'm going to go with Jordan Faison in offense.
Hold on. Oh, you ruined it. Go ahead.
Sorry. I would go with Faison on offense, and I don't think he would be considered like a breakout player. Like he had a breakout moment, and he's had some plays here and there, but I think he's going to be like consistently catching the ball, like 4, 5, 6 reception type day, and really working some yak yards. And I think that you'll see him a lot in motion, just using him as not only as like, eye candy decoy, but I think there's going to be design plays that involve him. So I'm going to go with Faison on offense.
The key, I think, to this question is the breakout player that you don't think people are expecting. Like everyone's going to say Jeremiah Love, or a lot of people are going to say Jeremiah Love because there's no Audric Estime, right?
Right.
So I've got to rule him out. Could it be Steve Angeli? Yeah, it could.
That's the safe bet. The quarterback's always the safe bet.
Yeah. I actually like who Big Lick said earlier.
Oh, Dion?
I'm going to roll with Deion Colzie. I'll roll with Deion Colzie right now as the breakout guy. We haven't seen him in a while. With everything that Deion Colzie brought with him to Notre Dame, like a really talented guy, missed some time with the injury, but an opportunity now, assuming he's 100% healthy, he's going to be out there on the field. I'll go with Colzie just because he's going to have a heck of an opportunity in this game potentially. He's going to have a lot more opportunity than he's had before. All right. So really right now, there are only a couple decisions that are left because, again, it sounds like we're going to see J.D. Bertrand play in the Sun Bowl. We're going to see Javonte Jean-Baptiste play in the Sun Bowl. We know Xavier Watts is going to play in the Sun Bowl. The decision that we're waiting on for him, is he going to declare for the draft? Same with Riley Mills. Is Riley Mills going to declare for the draft? There aren't too many other decisions out there that I can think of now at this point. Can you?
I don't think so. And I think
What? DK, Sean Steyer's kiss of death. Come on, man.
I was chuckling at that myself. I don't think that there's on the offensive side of the ball. Is there anyone else that's like potentially going to be out because the wide receivers transferred? Alton and Estime are out. I feel like the offense is pretty set at this point. It just might be like you were saying, a couple more of those defensive guys.
Yeah, it's pretty much what we know at this point. So I think that's it. We're just waiting to see if Watts is going to come back for another year, and ditto with Riley Mills.
What's
we're
your
down to that now?
What's your thoughts on Watts? Do you think he should? If you were Watts, would you come back? I personally would say no. I think you got to ride out that you just got a unanimous All-American. I think your stock is pretty high right now.
Yeah, his stock, the odds that it can get much higher are pretty slim. But at the same time, when we got a chance to talk with him last week, like he was critiquing his own game, and he feels like there are definitely things that he can be better at that can put him in a, like he would get drafted this year. The question is, where does he get drafted? I still don't think for the season that he had that he is going to be, he's not going to be as high as day 2. At best, he's probably early to mid day 3 right now. Can he put himself at least into day 2 conversation next year? I think that's kind of what he's looking at. And I think that he thinks he can, with a little bit more work and another season to get better with that he can put himself into that conversation, that he can potentially rise that high next year. So, again, like he could go make a little bit of money this year, but there's still no guarantees. So I like the fact that he's betting on himself potentially. And,
so you're saying that he needs to, there's potential of, there's the face of this really nice awards that he's won and everything like that. But we're more so looking at, those, not that those interceptions could have potentially just fall into him, obviously, but he feels like there's more things that he needs to polish up in terms of the toolbox before he makes that commitment of I'm ready to be an NFL type DB.
Right. Like man to, like coverage type stuff and,
right.
Refining his tackling, as being a little bit more sure tackler. And I'm sure that especially for playing a safety, just probably like an extra 10 pounds of muscle would do him pretty good as well. So that kind of seemed to be the things that he was talking about when we had the chance to talk about him. So I hope he does. I mean, that would be like, especially when you look at where the defense is right now, they could really use him coming back next year. All right, Jess, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right. Fill in the blank. Audric Estime's Notre Dame career was blank.
That's a tough one. How do you sum up such a versatile, athletic, powerful type of guy? I think Audric Estime's career at Notre Dame was short-lived, I think is the best way to put it. And I think that we will ultimately wish we had more of him at the end of the day because we only got, a little bit of that sample size. And to me, what we were talking about earlier in the show, he's just like the complete back, right? Like he's big, he's strong, he's powerful, he's fast, he's light on his feet, he's everything. He's a great leader, he's a workhorse. You can put the team on his back. Like it was just too short for me at the end of the day. And I wish that we had the opportunity in a selfish way to get even more of him because he's Baby Bus Jr. and I want to keep seeing some more of that.
Baby Bus Jr., not just Baby Bus, but he is Baby Bus Jr. as well. I mean, it's crazy. You're right. It did seem shorter than it actually was because we barely got to see him as a freshman. He only had 7 carries as a freshman, but he had, over 350 carries in the last 2 seasons. And to me, it was just a breath of fresh air because like Audric Estime was always kind of one of those, he didn't necessarily always give you the best quote, but at the same time, like he was having fun with it. And was like you could always kind of see behind, sort of that, sly little grin, like there were some things going on back there that he wasn't going to let you in on. But at the same time, he had fun with it. And he just looked like a guy who was always out there having fun playing. And just the way that he played, again, like there's nothing I love more than seeing, that big bruising running back who could not only be physical, but kind of have that shiftiness and have that breakaway speed like Audric Estime had to go with it as well. So it was a lot of fun. It was again a breath of fresh air, and at the end of the day, I agree with what you said. It was also a little bit shorter than I think that we all
I think he was
wished could have been.
ultimately underappreciated as well. And to me, my favorite thing of Audric Estime is what you were kind of talking about is, man, when the fourth quarter came and it was time to end games, I love seeing Audric Estime go to work because that's when he deserved the ball. As a running back, you earn the right to run that ball in the fourth quarter when the
Close
defensive
it
line
out.
is worn
That's
down, the
right.
linebackers are worn down. Last thing that they want to do is tackle big old Audric Estime coming downhill in the hole.
Yep. When they're sucking for wind, just punch him in the mouth and don't let him breathe. Just keep on trucking, man. And
Just
that's
keep
that.
on trucking.
He was fun to watch. That's for sure. All right, fill in the blank. It is blank that it looks like Notre Dame is going to be hosting Wake Forest wide receiver Jamal Banks this weekend after already getting commitments from two other veteran receivers.
It's electric. And the reason why I say it's electric is because Notre Dame isn't stopping in terms of trying to add firepower or electricity to this offense next season. And it's very obvious that they're targeting guys that they feel are a very good fit for the system that they want to run next season. And so the more guys that they can get out of the portal, especially considering, who left, and then the excitement that you add of bringing in Coach Mike Brown, I'm just excited to see how all of this, meshes together and this whole thing, gets going. But the more talented bodies that you can add in a room, I think that just makes your room more electric and dynamic. So I'm hoping that they can get Jamal Banks.
Yeah, I mean, again, like they've already got the two veterans in Bo Collins and Chris Mitchell from Clemson and Florida International, but they're not stopping there. And Banks is another outside receiver, just like the other guys, but he's got a little bit more size to him. He's 6'4", 205 pounds. He comes from Wake Forest. He played with Sam Hartman, of course, at Wake Forest. So there's a connection there. So I'm sure that there's been a little bit of Sam Hartman, kind of working the in between there, kind of, maybe kind of helping the connection between Banks and the Notre Dame staff. So I think that that's good. And I love the fact that, look, what has been one of the biggest issues for this offense the last 2 years? Wide receivers, right? And they've already gone out and added two guys who they know can produce. They're bringing in another veteran quarterback, and now they might potentially be bringing in a third veteran wide receiver. And it's like, you don't want to compete for a job, then maybe this isn't for you.
Right.
But they had to address this, and they've still got talented guys coming in, but until they get that room, really kind of restocked with their own young talented guys the way they need to, because let's not forget, they obviously lost 4 receivers going out the door this offseason. So to be able to go out and potentially bring in a third guy with this kind of experience would be huge. So I think it's pretty cool that they're hosting another guy. They're not stopping with what they've got so far.
Yeah, and some of the limited time that I had to dig into some Jamal Banks, I think the thing that was most noticeable is that 2022 season that you brought up with Sam Hartman. He had 42 catches, just about 650 yards and 9 touchdowns. So I really like the 9 touchdown parts because that's a guy who can finish drives for you and can get you into the end zone. And then last year he had 0 drops on 88 targets. So we know he's a sure-handed wide receiver. And again, I don't think that he's a huge kind of, yards after catch kind of guy. He's one of those guys who's usually catching the ball. And like, it reminds me of Jason Witten towards the end when he would just catch the ball and just get tackled and kind of go down. I'm not saying it's that dramatic, but he's not a huge kind of, shifty. He uses more of his body to shield you off. And he's not going to do much after the catch, but he's a sure-handed receiver. He's going to catch the ball, and I think he knows how to catch the ball in traffic as well. So I think that's going to be very beneficial for them. A guy who can catch the ball over the middle of the field and be comfortable with it.
Carmel Humphrey, 6'3" Banks, 6'3" Collins, get the bodies on the outside instantly, 6'5" Colsey. And I mean, again, think about it, just what you're talking about, the end zone. How many, we haven't seen the last couple of years many fades to the end zones to receivers, right?
Right.
Because it's just, it just hasn't been there. And these are the kind of guys who can give you that. And not only give you that, but give you, plays on the outside again, because we know that they've got slot receivers. They've got slot receivers for days. They've got to have guys on the outside who can go out there and produce. And in all three of these guys, including Banks, are the kind who can go out there and do it. So I love it. So Tyler Buchner and Drew Pine combined to start all 13 games for Marcus Freeman's 9-4 team last year. And as we've talked about, both Pine and Buchner are going to be back at Notre Dame this spring, but neither is going to be playing football. So does that make you sort of reconsider how you think about Marcus Freeman's first season?
It makes me appreciate that first season a little bit more, just because, I mean, let's be honest about the quarterback room that he was left with. It was Buchner, Pine, and Angeli, right? Buchner and Pine are both not playing football next semester. Buchner said he's not playing again. We don't know if Pine's going to move on after, finishing whatever he does at Notre Dame. And then if we're being completely transparent, it seems like Riley Leonard is going to beat out Angeli. So where does that leave Angeli after this? So I felt like Marcus Freeman, for being a first-time head coach and taking over, and again, not that he doesn't know offense, but he's not a super offensive-oriented guy. He's a defensive-oriented guy. That's his background. And so I think the ability to get the most out of that team in your first year, really, it was underappreciated. And I think it shows kind of, the work that Marcus Freeman put in. I don't think it excuses some of those bad losses against Stanford and Marshall, because I think you still have enough talent to win those games. But for what he was given and what he was able to get out of it in terms of quarterback production, I felt like it was a good job, a job well done.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at the fact, for different reasons, but I think that they combined to play 3 games at the 2 schools that they were at this year. Maybe it was 4, but I mean, Buchner got his 1 start and then he kind of disappeared after that. And, Drew Pine, I still think Drew Pine is going to end up playing football someplace.
Oh, he will.
I think that he's back to get his degree, get his undergrad degree this spring, and then he can still enter the transfer portal in April, and then, go out and transfer someplace else over the summer, but do it as a graduate student. But at the same time, again, it's just, it is a little bit amazing when you look at where these guys are right now, just a little, not even a year later, basically, like we're still within a 12-month time span of last season when all this stuff, when Drew Pine transferred last year and Tyler Buchner was coming back and, becoming, the quarterback in the Gator Bowl. The only thing that kind of makes me say, well, but is, they're a loss in the Sun Bowl away from having the exact same record as last year, or they're a win in the Sun Bowl from having one more win than last year. Right? With Sam Hartman, a completely
so does that make this
season
quarterback more disappointing?
Right. I mean, you still can't forgive the kind of losses that they had last year, but again, you do kind of have to look at it through a little bit different lens, I think, when you look at where these 2 guys are just a year later. It's crazy to think about it.
I think, and then I think the other flip side of what you were just kind of getting into, to play devil's advocate, is, were we expecting too much out of Sam Hartman, knowing kind of what offense he came out of? You know what I mean? Was he the quarterback that we build him up to be, or was he just, was he just kind of average like Pine and Buchner? And so are we waiting on a true dynamic quarterback for Marcus Freeman to also kind of break out as well. I feel like those two things in college football and really in the NFL are what run parallels together. In order to be a successful coach, you more than likely have to have a pretty successful quarterback. But if you're Mike McDaniel, you're the reason why that quarterback is successful. You're doing everything in your power to enable that quarterback to be the best version of themselves. And I think that's been the biggest knock so far to me in Notre Dame is, yeah, if you're dealt crappy hands, that's fine. If you're dealt a hand that might not be, as advantageous as you want, again, that's fine. But let's do more to try to, again, find what these quarterbacks are really good at so Notre Dame can also excel as well.
Yeah, and that's still kind of the lens, that's the other part of the lens is Tommy Rees showed through most of his Notre Dame career that he was good at adapting to the personnel that he had. I think his last season, it seemed like, is he really doing that? But again, like when you look now at what's become of these two quarterbacks, maybe it actually was, maybe he was, making, I'll do the nice version of it. Maybe he really was making lemonade out of lemons at times, and we didn't realize it at the time because, look at, this was supposed to be the worst year in Alabama football since one of Nick Saban's first years. And look at where it ended up, and look at just the mess at times that became of Notre Dame's offense this year with a 6th-year veteran quarterback. And, Jimmy, I saw him say, did they really get the best? Did they really use Sam Hartman right? I mean, it was not what any of us thought it was going to be. It was not what Sam Hartman thought it was going to be. It wasn't what Marcus Freeman or Jared Parker thought it was going to be. It wasn't what anyone thought it was going to be. And I think only they truly know, who's how the blame, if that's the way you want to put it, is kind of divvied up on what it actually became.
I think Lloyd's comment is very appropriate.
Lloyd Christmas.
Yeah.
Anyone that doubted Nick's assessment of Tommy hasn't been paying attention to the last decade of college football.
Saban knows how to pick them.
Yeah. I mean,
he just doesn't go knocking on anyone's door.
Nope. Fill in the blank. It's blank that with Xavier Watts and Joe Alt both earning unanimous All-American honors, Notre Dame has a pair of unanimous All-Americans for the first time since 1990.
It is EPIC, epic, baby. Never happened in my lifetime. I couldn't even tell you who it was in 1990. I'm sure you
want to know?
could.
Do you want to know?
Lay it on me.
All right. The three. Do you have a guess? Do you have a guess on any of them?
I'm not good with the history, especially before I was even around. So
they're all college football Hall of Famers now, 33 years later. Okay. Rocket Ismail.
Okay.
Chris Zorich, and Michael Stonebreaker, who just went in last
Anthony
week.
Got 2 of them.
Did he? Oh, there he is. Anthony Solomon. Yep. Rocket and Stonebreaker. Stonebreaker, Zorich, Ismail were the 3.
So they not only in 1990 they had 3 of them. So that was even a larger task. And I guess there's a little bit of surprise to me as well because Notre Dame has had really good players. Since 1990, it just sounds like they haven't had the ability to kind of stack up, multiple unanimous All-American selections in one season. Do you know, was Kyle Hamilton an All-American? I was thinking about that the other day.
Oof. I'm sure he got something, but I can't say off the top of my head exactly what you're going to spring that on me now.
You know all the other stuff.
Well, some of this stuff, when I've got time to look it up, let me see.
Oh, he got it. He got
consensus. He was consensus.
There we go.
He was a consensus All-American in 2021.
Also doesn't help that he was in the same kind of class as Sauce Gardner. So both guys were playing in the NFL. The only reason I bring that up is because today Kyle Hamilton was anointed by PFF the highest graded safety in the NFL.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's working out for him. And just so, like, in case you're wondering, the 5 All-American teams that you have to make to be a unanimous All-American: Football Writers Association of America, Walter Camp, Associated Press, the Sporting News, and the American Football Coaches
Oh,
Association.
wow. I
Those
didn't even
are the
realize that
5.
there were 5 different, and that's what makes you
Yeah, you
unanimous.
have to get it in 5, all 5,
Oof,
to be a unanimous.
that is some prestigious honor.
Yes, exactly. So it's like, and again, like the fact that they've got 2 of them for the first time in 33 years is amazing, because there has been a lot of football and a lot of Notre Dame and a lot of great football players come through here in the last 33 years for them to finally have 2 in the same season. And these are obviously 2 really good players. And we know one of them is going to be a first round draft pick. And as we talked about before with Watts, maybe potentially trying to play himself into that if he decides to come back next year. And I think it's a nod to the direction that the program continues to trend in and the development within the program as well. Because, I mean, think about this. These are 2 unanimous All-Americans at the same time: Joe Alt, Xavier Watts. Alt was a tight end in high school coming to Notre Dame. They turned into a left tackle. And Xavier Watts was recruited as a wide receiver and well documented, bounced back and forth on both sides of the ball. They even tried to play him at Rover before tinkering with him wide receiver again, before finally settling him in at safety. Going into last season, it wasn't even for sure that he was a safety. And now he's the Nagurski winner and a unanimous All-American as well. So it's pretty amazing the way they've been able to, to get these guys, develop these guys. And again, I think it's like the direction the program is going. It's a huge, I think somebody said it a little bit ago. It's a huge recruiting banner for these guys with what they're able to, with what Notre Dame is able to do with players.
Yeah, and I think it goes to show you, if you are, a young athlete coming into this world, don't get caught up about what position you're playing or not playing. Obviously Notre Dame has proven, and a lot of schools are like this too. They're just looking for that overall athleticism or that raw ability that can then be, transformed into, what best fits maybe the player at that time, the team at that time, whatever it might be. If you have the
Yeah.
talent and the ability, they're going to find a position for you.
By the way, don't get this confused with these are the first unanimous All-Americans since 1990. It's the first time they've had 2 at the same time, because like Carmel was saying, shocked that Jalen Smith, I know Manti was, Quentin Nelson, I think was. Again, it's the first time they've had 2 in the same season. It's not the first time they've had a unanimous All-American since 1990. It's just the first time they have had 2 in the same season. So they have had other unanimous All-Americans. They just haven't had 2 in the same season since 1990. So just to clarify that. So fill in the blank. Talking about Xavier Watts, we're still waiting for a decision from him on whether or not he's going to be back at Notre Dame next season. He and Benjamin Morrison, though, were both in that Riley Leonard video earlier this week when Leonard announced that he's transferring to Notre Dame. That means blank to you.
I think Xavier Watts is coming back is what that means to me, because you're not using him in a recruiting pitch. And then based on the comments that, we've kind of digested or dissected, whatever the word might be. And at the end of the day, again, I just don't feel like knowing, how Xavier Watts has talked about his gameplay, how kind of, the NFL might be looking at his gameplay of, there's some things here and there that you might need to polish up. And then when you're bringing your biggest recruits in for the weekend, I feel like it's a good look to have a guy that is going to be one of the leaders next season as well, because that's what those guys are. I feel like Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts are going to be the leaders of the defense, and JD Bertrand, of course, if he comes back as well. But having those guys out there is to me is that you're giving the full pitch of, this is what it's going to be. These are going to be the guys, going forward with you, moving forward.
Yeah, I think that with him being in that video, just what you said, I think that, we can read into that a little bit. Like, we know that Benjamin Morrison is going to be back, and it just really seems like when you listen to Xavier Watts last week and you see him in this video, it just all signs seem to be pointing that even though he hasn't made that announcement yet, he hasn't made or at least announced the decision. All signs seem to be pointing to him coming back. So I think that that is really good as well. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking to find the unanimous All-Americans.
I found them.
Did you find the list of unanimous? Okay,
I
so
did.
give us an example, or give us kind of like maybe in the last 20 years or so, like who the unanimous All-Americans have been.
In terms of Notre Dame, they didn't have any last season. The year before that, they had oh no, they didn't have anyone in 2022 or 2021. Last time they had one was 2020. It was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Okay.
Before that, it was Quentin Nelson back in 2017. Before that, it was, I believe it was just Manti before that. Manti in 2012. 2009 was Golden Tate. Before that, let's see. I'm not seeing anyone in 2008, 2007. Not seeing anyone in 2006. Not seeing anyone in 2005. Not seeing anyone in 2004. And then, 2002, Shane Walton, defensive back. I don't even remember that name.
You don't remember Shane Walton? Yep, him and Vontez Duff doing it together in the secondary. The two cornerbacks for Bob Davie. And by the way, someone just posted this in the chat. Riley Mills is back, and Riley Mills just tweeted, "I got one more in me. Hashtag 2024." So Riley Mills, breaking news, Riley Mills is coming back in 2024 for Notre Dame. More big news. So you've got the entire, well, not the entire, you've got 3 of the 4 starting defensive linemen, and the one you're going to lose, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, you're going to replace with RJ Oben from Duke, who is the exact same size, 6'4", 260 pounds, and has a little bit better production in his career than what Javonte Jean-Baptiste had coming into Notre Dame a year ago.
Man, after reading that list, it's just kind of crazy to me that Notre Dame really hasn't had, since spanning the last 30 years, they've had maybe, 5 or 6, and now that they hit on 2 in the same season, that's kind of crazy because the last one that I could see was Aaron Taylor back in 1993. So spanning back over 30 years, you only have about 5 or 6 guys, and so to get 2 in the same season, like this is truly incredible.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, when you think about all the talent they've had over the years, who are you laughing at now?
Slappy Joe.
Yeah, I know. He's talking about, why can't we lose Jordan? He's a Viper who can't put pressure on the guy. Still waiting for it to happen. Still waiting for it.
Man, this defense is going to be crazy next year.
It's going to be really good.
If Watts comes back with Benjamin Morrison and Mickey and Gray, and now you got Howard and you got Mills back, and there's potential Kaiser's going to be back. There's potential Bertrand's going to be back. Then you mix in Osbury and Drake Bowen as some of these younger linebackers. Jalen Sneed is you would expect to have a bigger role. To me, really the missing piece is can they shore up those defensive end positions? And with Oben on kind of the brink of potentially committing, it seems like this whole unit could just be as even better next season if you really think about it.
Brent wants to know who the 3 starting linebackers will be in 2024. I would think it will be Drake Bowen. This is just, again, there's a spring to go through. There's a lot right now. I would say Drake Bowen at Mike. I would say Jack Kaiser at Will, and Jalen Sneed at Rover.
Ooh.
But I still think that Jaden Osbury will play a lot next year as well, whether or not he's the starter. But you're not bringing Jack Kaiser back if he's not going to be starting.
If there's not a role for him.
Yeah. That's right.
You're not talking to Jack Kaiser and be like, hey, we're bringing you back, and then not playing him next season.
Yeah. Bryce Simony says all these defensive guys coming back makes me think Golden is going to be coming back. I would tend to agree with that. I still think the only thing that would prevent that, unless Golden is just dead set that he is definitely going to stay at Notre Dame and be at Notre Dame's defensive coordinator for at least another year. I think the only thing is you're going to have all these, in about a month here, you're going to have a lot of coaching vacancies in the NFL, and whether or not an NFL team comes looking for Al Golden, that would be the thing I think that could potentially get him away if he desires to be an NFL defensive coordinator, since he's had, so much time in the NFL. DK wants me to say Watts is leaving because I really want him back. I mean, am I really that much of a kiss of death? Like everything I predict, like the opposite, like I will do the opposite. And that's how...
me. That's been me in gambling recently. You should just fade everything I do.
That's right. All right, DK, if it makes you happy, Watts is leaving. He's not coming back. Okay. There you go. Did he announce? But Riley Mills is coming back. So it's, again, you've got Botello at Viper. You've got both interior defensive linemen in Riley Mills and Howard Cross. You've got RJ Oben now to replace Javonte Jean-Baptiste. So it's going to be another really good defensive line. And you've got those young guys behind him. And I think that that's going to be good for another year of development for everybody to have those, both the frontline guys and the guys at the back. Joe says I have to say it with heart. I thought I was saying it with heart. All right. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell says the league's competition committee is going to continue to look at and evaluate the brotherly love, tush push, whatever it's called, that the Eagles use in their short yardage situations. A lot of people want it banned. Do you buy or sell banning it like some people want?
I sell banning it. And the reason why I sell banning it is everyone's just a hater. I've seen teams try to run it. They can't successfully do it. I just think there's a lot of pushback because of the fact that they can't do it. And I know everyone's going to fall back on, player safety, that's the main thing. And, how they're going about completing the play, whatever. Listen, if you don't want them to do it, one, stop them. And then two, don't let them get in 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 type situations. It's really not that hard. I think I saw one brotherly shove game when when the Cowboys were playing the Eagles the other night. You know why? Because they didn't get them into some of those, or they didn't allow the Eagles to get into those positions. And so if you're going to complain about it, find a way to stop it. That's the way the NFL has run. When they introduced, the way Patrick Mahomes plays, when they introduced RG3, when he came into the league, a lot of teams couldn't stop him. Or are we just going to ban dual threat quarterbacks for that reason? No, you have to find ways to get innovative to stop them. Scheme it, do different things.
I don't understand why everyone is so worked up about banning a play that only one team has managed to use successfully almost 100% of the time. Like, nobody else is able to run it the way the Eagles are. It is only them that is as successful as they are with this play. All these other teams are trying, and they don't have a quarterback who can squat like 700 pounds or 800 pounds or whatever it is, like Jalen Hurts. They're the only ones who can do it. So I don't understand why everyone is so worked up about this. And I mean, it is a simple quarterback sneak play that, for whatever reason, the Eagles are successful, but nobody else is. Like, stop it if you don't like it. And you're going to change a whole rule just because one team is good at something is just ridiculous to me. I would be curious to see, like, if you took Jalen Hurts out of the mix, like how successful even the Eagles would be with it.
It's just like, imagine when the West Coast offense was first introduced and teams were like, wow, this is really hard to stop. Should we ban this?
Right.
That's the same concept. Or using like motions and, all this stuff that, Shanahan and McDaniel and all these guys are constantly like, did you see Tyreek Hill line up in a 3-point stance in some of his routes the other night? It's just like, there's new ways to be innovative. And that's the whole point. You have to be able, as a defensive, that's what you get paid to do. You're a defensive coordinator in the NFL. You have to be able to scheme and try to, figure out how to stop new things.
By the way, Brent came at you early with
Oh,
this one.
man.
I've been saving it. He wants to know who's the number one passer in the NFL with only 48% of his passing yards from Yak, Mahomes and Rodgers MVP seasons, 54 and 56%. So who's the number one quarterback in the
It's a
NFL?
very pointed question after
Could
a very
he be
pointed
possibly
comment.
talking about Brock Purdy? Like,
I think that he wants me to say that Brock Purdy is the league's best quarterback, but I'm just simply not gonna say it. I'll put it like this. I think that there are probably 4 or 5 quarterbacks in this league better than Brock Purdy right now.
ooh, do they have names?
I'd put Dak Prescott up there. I put Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes.
Controversial.
Tua would be up there, and I think Tua and Brock would be on pretty much the same playing field. And then Herbert, when he's healthy, is better. And then I think Lamar might also be better.
Is Tua really that good?
Tua, you can give me some.
If you take Tyreek away, look, man, I don't want to hear all these people, coming with the Dak doubt right now, because he's legitimately being talked about for MVP.
He's the favorite right now. Go on FanDuel and see who's got the.
Yeah, we're talking about this season. We're talking about this season, and like there are things you can knock in Dak's game, but for this season, and especially the way he's playing in the current stretch, you can't talk about him right now. DK Flacco is better than Dak. T Guns. I mean, it's there is an argument in this that Brock is a product of the talent around him, and I think you can make that case about Jalen Hurts as well. I mean, really, when it comes right down to it, isn't DeVito the best quarterback in the NFL right now? Like,
I think he's got the best agent, that's for sure.
That's right. All right, but Brent had to be sure and get his 49ers zing in on Jesse tonight.
He did his homework. He was ready to come in there with that. He's ready. He's ready. He was ready to come in with that.
Hold it. Big Lick is trying to say that you can make that argument about Dak. What? Because he has one good receiver. Like,
I would say that Dak is bringing
all this talent around
his team. I think Dak is the reason why some of his talent is excelling. Like, look at what Brandon Cooks is doing this season. For this offense, I know Brandon Cooks is a consistently 1,000-yard receiver, but I mean, just like if you.
But they didn't go to him early, like,
right.
And that's part of the difference in where Dak is right now, because he figured out, oh, I can throw to this guy as well. But the biggest difference is they're throwing to their best receiver more consistently.
They're doing what the Bengals, the Vikings, all the good teams, even the 49ers with, Deebo Samuel, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Good offenses find ways to just get their best wide receiver the ball.
Yeah, Cam Newton says he doesn't think Purdy is a top quarterback. And look,
that sparked a lot of debate yesterday.
At the end of the day, does Purdy have a lot of talent around him? Yes, he does. And does Jalen Hurts? Yes, he does. But the quarterback still has to be able to get that talent the ball, and he still has, whether if you want to knock those guys by calling them, system quarterbacks or whatever, that's fine. But they're not going to have the success that they have if the quarterback that they've got is a dog, that's got a bunch of talent around him. So you still have to give those guys props for going out and executing and doing what they're asked to do, regardless of how much talent they've got around them.
I think I'll keep it short in terms of Cam Newton's comments. I think Cam Newton is just a little butthurt. He's not in the league, and he's seen these other quarterbacks around him in the league. But I got a news flash for you, Cam Newton. Yeah. If you wanted to stay in the league, you should have, tweaked your game a little bit. You were a quarterback, a running back that sometimes played quarterback. When it came down to actually dissecting teams with your arm and reading defenses and those sort of things, I don't think Cam Newton was it. He relied on his running, and once he couldn't, do that anymore because of the injuries and just the age on him, there's a reason why he's been out of the league for a while now, right? Like, he could have very easily still been a backup quarterback in this league right now, but that's not what he wants to do, and he doesn't want to adjust to what's being asked of him. He just wants to play quarterback how he wants to play, and so I just think there's a lot of envy that comes from what he was saying.
Yep. So Al Michaels left NBC after several years to move to Amazon last year to call the Thursday night NFL games. NBC still had Michaels and Tony Dungy call a playoff game together last year. And you might remember it was pretty well criticized for lack of enthusiasm in the broadcast. But NBC announced this week that the 79-year-old Al Michaels is now out, and they are going to put Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge into the playoff assignment this year. What do you think of that move?
I enjoyed the Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge, and I'll be short about this one. I feel like Al Michaels recently has just kind of turned into that old crotchety, old man. And it's like no one wants to listen to that, especially when the playoffs are on. This is supposed to be the most exciting, anticipated, football of the year. And when Al Michaels is sitting here complaining all the time about this and that and being, the get off my lawn guy, who wants to listen to that? And so you bring in a younger Noah Eagle, guys who are more passionate, and kind of in a sense want to be there or grateful to be there. That's who they're going to roll with. So I think it's all, Al Michaels' own doing. So, and I love Al Michaels, but I want the guy who's going to make the playoffs more interesting and be more excited about it. Even if it's a bad game, it's kind of what your job is to do, is to make the game better because it's not going as you anticipated.
It's exactly right. I've called plenty of stinker games in my life, but it is still your job to make it as interesting as possible and to try to give people a reason to watch, / listen, even if the game is uninteresting. And complaining about it on the air doesn't help anything. Look, there's a strong case for Al Michaels as the best play-by-play announcer of all time. And at the very least, the Mount Rushmore of play-by-play announcers. It's all personal taste, so whatever. But the guy has been doing network TV play-by-play for more than 50 years. But just like sports, it's a bottom line business, and everyone's time comes at some point. Pitchers lose their fastballs and announcers lose their fastballs at some point as well. And Michaels is still a good play-by-play announcer, but he's just not what he was even 5 years ago, because, the longer you stay around, the greater the odds are that you're not going to get out to, you're not going to get to go out on your own terms. It's just a fact of life. And, he wants to keep that NBC playoff job, but look, he moved to Amazon last year. And what did I text you a couple of weeks ago when we were watching the Cowboys and the Seahawks on Thursday Night Football, when Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit were calling the game together? Do you remember what I texted you?
I think you said something about how boring it was.
It's a boring broadcast.
I muted the second half, so
yeah. It is technically a solid broadcast, but it's just boring. And the stuff you were talking about, the grumpy old man and all, like he's complaining about the quality of the game. He's complaining about, I don't want to show Taylor Swift. Well, guess what? Everyone else is showing Taylor Swift. And so far it's like you might infuriate the hardcore football people, but the casuals love it, right? And I get it. Like most of the Thursday night matchups are the equivalent of probably the 5th or 6th game that you're going to get on a Sunday. But Michaels is paid like one of the elite broadcasters still. He's getting paid a lot more than those guys who are calling the 5th or 6th best NFL game on a Sunday. So he's been great forever. Right now, his broadcasts are not among the greats, and NBC has the right to do with what they want to do. And that's what they're doing.
Correct.
Joe says he mutes the games when Garrett is on. And that's, that'll be an off-season topic once, a lot of this personnel stuff, transfer portal and opt-outs and everything else finally dies down. That'll be an off-season topic, I'm sure, as well. Excuse me, that is going to come up again and again. Brent is still coming at you. Who leads the NFL in quarterback rating?
Go to
Who
PFF.
is first in air yards of 30-plus?
Go read Stephen Ruiz articles.
We get it. They're going to be
I'm not
the
saying he's
seed.
Not bad.
They're probably going to go to the Super Bowl, So.
The MVP is going to be between Dak and Brock, assuming that both guys continue to play how they're playing. So we'll let the NFL decide ultimately.
I mean, Dak's got a tough stretch coming up here this month.
Yeah, he's got the Bills. He's got
I mean,
the
if he gets
Lions.
if him and the team get through this, in good shape, and he doesn't just collapse in December, he's going to be in that conversation, like it or not. I don't know that he's necessarily the MVP, but you have to at least give him this. Everyone was bagging on him because of all the interceptions that he threw. It's, all you heard in the offseason, oh, he led the NFL in interceptions. Well, he's a lot different quarterback right now. And I find it hysterical, and we're going to see him matched up with Josh Allen this weekend. I find it hysterical that all these Buffalo Bills fans think that Josh Allen, oh, he gets all this unfair criticism and blah, blah, blah. He has led the NFL, the entire NFL in turnovers
since he
like
joined.
the last 5 years. Yeah, but I don't think he gets enough criticism. So,
well, again, now the classic Dan Orlovsky backpedal is, oh, all the great quarterbacks have interceptions because they're asked to throw the ball a lot. So it's just narrative based. People pick and choose when they want to hold interceptions or whatever it might be against you. And to me, that's like what I've done the most this season in terms of the Cowboys and Dak. I just disconnected. I formulated my own opinions on how I think things are going. I'm tired of everyone else trying to tell me, what I should think of this or that and how they're playing. Just I can do that myself.
This was earlier in the show. DK is just always happy when he hears Dallas Cowboys references. So keep it coming. Make DK happy. As many Dallas Cowboys references as you can. So, all right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. It is Thursday. Thursday is usually the last day of the week that we do a show. Rumor has it there could be another Friday show in the works. So we shall see. We shall see what happens. Again, the top news of the last 2 hours, Audric Estime declaring for the NFL draft, opting out of the Sun Bowl, but Riley Mills announcing that he is coming back for one more year. So we could be finally getting to the end of the breaking opt-out draft declarations for Notre Dame. We could finally be reaching the end of that stretch. We shall see tomorrow, I guess. Are you hopeful?
I am. It's just time to get locked in on the bull. All this is just extra noise. It's time to move on. You're either
Jesse,
in or out.
I think what the world, well, that's a good question. What the world wants to know, Vince has committed to a Friday show. Are you willing to commit to a Friday show?
There's potential. There's strong potential.
Okay.
Tomorrow I could be there.
3-man booth tomorrow?
I could be there.
You're in. We'll be here tomorrow. All three of us, Steyer Squared and VD, will be in the house 6 o'clock Friday night. So be here because we will as well. You're in?
I'm
Hold
there.
you to it.
I'm there.
3-man show, 6 o'clock.
He's buying dinner.
Vince, well, I know that's a lie. That's not happening. All right, well, we will talk to you then. Hit the like button on your way out, and of course, subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you, DK. IB Nation Sports Talk.